Alright, let's get started. First of all, we'll open the resources folder downloaded from this section. As usual, there are 3 additional folders and a supplementary workbook file inside it. You will find the source code of the finished project in the green folder. This source code can help you when you get stuck and need some quick assistance. In the pink folder, you will find all the resource materials. Finally, we are going to save our new project in the blue folder. Great. Now let's open the workbook document and take a brief look at the learning objectives. As you can notice, there is a comprehensive list of the topics we will cover in this safely.The project. Are you such excited as I'm? Cool. Now let's close this document and open Xcode with the latest version downloaded from the App Store. New project. Our first step is to create a new Xcode project from the Welcome screen. There is a new pop-up window from which first we need to select the iOS menu bar. After that, we need to choose the app template from the available options. Finally, click on the Next button to go to the project configuration window. Now, we need to configure this new iOS project. For the product name, enter Restart. For the team option, if you already have an Apple developer account, logging in here allows you to build your app on a real device. If you don't have an Apple developer account, you can skip this part and test your app in the iOS simulator on your Mac. Organization identifier. We usually enter our website address in reverse order. For example, academy.credo. Please make sure that your organization is different so you can compile the provided finished project if it's necessary. The bundle identifier is automatically combined from the project name and the organization identifier. Next, the app interface must be safely.The. After that, let's keep Swift as the primary programming language. Finally, since we will not use core data or unit testing in this project, therefore please uncheck these options. After all of the necessary settings, click on the Next button. And now we need to tell Xcode where we want to save our safely.The project on the computer. Please navigate to the Students folder as the destination as I do. Now, click on the Create button. And Xcode creates all files and folders for this advanced project. App icons. Splendid. Now we'll start the development by adding the prepared high-quality resource materials to the project. First, select the Assets catalog in the Project Navigator panel. Then click on the app icon in the middle panel. You can see an empty set of icons on the right part of the editor. Second, please open a new Finder window and navigate to the Resources folder as I show you. We need to open the app icon folder and select all files in this subfolder. Here, we're going to add this set of icons to the Restart project. After that, we will copy every file to the clipboard at once. Then jump back to Xcode and right-click or Control-click on the app icon group as I show you. By doing this, a new context menu will show up. Select the Show in Finder option from this menu. And Xcode will bring us to the Projects Icons folder in a new Finder window. Next, open the App Icons said folder. There is only a so-called content.JSON file in it. Paste everything from the clipboard into this place. You will be asked to replace the existing file, obviously. Click on the Replace button, and we are good to go. Excellent job so far. Sound files. Now, it's time to add the rest of the asset files to the project. Go back to the root of the Resources folder. Then select the Characters folder there. After that, drag and drop this specific folder into the middle pane of the editor, as I show you. Great. With that, we have just added 2 professional illustrations to this project. We will add 2 sound files with different file extensions directly to the project instead of the Assets catalog. First, open the Sounds folder. Then drag and drop all sound files here into the root folder of our project in the Project Navigator pane as I do. When a new window pops up, then select the Copy items if needed in the Create folder References options. Before clicking on the Finish button, ensure that the Restart project is also selected as a target. These settings are very important to get access to these sound files later on. Splendid. After that, select these sound files in the Project Navigator. And by secondary click on them, let us create a new group from the selection. Give this folder the sounds name. To make sure that we added these files correctly to the project, we will check them out before continuing. That being said, first select one of the sound files in the folder. Then make sure that the target membership and the location of this file is our restart project in the attributes pane on the right side of Xcode. If everything is correct, then we can move on. Color sets. Now, go back to the Project Navigator pane and click on the Assets library. Here we're going to add a new accent color to this project. To do that, first, select the accent color set in the middle pane. Then please, select the empty color slot in the editor window as I show you. After that, go to the Color section in the Attributes panel and change the color environment from none to either sRGB or Display P3. It will allow us to enter our custom color. The easiest way to do this is to enter the hexadecimal value of the color. That's why we need to change the input from floating point to 8-bit hexadecimal. Then enter the following hex value. Hash 5 3 A 4 D 6. As you can see in the editor, we have just added a blue color for the project's accent color. Our program will automatically use this specific color on various occasions during development. How cool is that? But we don't stop here since we need to create 2 new color sets. So let's do it right now. First, select this blue color in the editor. And by pressing the Command+C shortcut keys, please copy it to the clipboard. After that, go to the bottom part of the middle panel and click on the plus button as I show you. This action will pop up a new context menu, where we can create a new color set. For this new color set, please add the following name: color blue with capital letters. As you can see, we need to select each white color slot in the editor and replace it with our custom blue color from the clipboard by pressing the Command+V shortcut keys. We are done with it. Easy peasy, isn't it? Now let's create a new red color set, shall we? Like before, please click on the plus button in the middle pane. And let's create a new color set. Then, give it the name, color red. Before editing these default white colors, we will need to select both of them in the editor. Finally, go to the Attributes pane and enter the following hexadecimal value for this color. Hash C 67976. Excellent job so far. If you like keeping the assets files organized, please put the custom red and blue colors into a new folder as I show you. Then we will give it the name Colors. Awesome. After doing all this necessary prep work, we are ready to start developing the Restart application. Project structure. But before we start coding, we will create all folders that we need beforehand. You can watch some sloppy developers on YouTube who likes to do this housekeeping later on when their whole project is a big mess or skip it altogether. However, I would like to show you that continuous project organization can help us focus on more essential things. After all, being a developer in the industry for a while, it's not rocket science to know beforehand what kind of folders and files we will need to have. Besides that, we can change our minds whenever we want if it's necessary. Okay, enough with the talk, and let's jump into it. First of all, select the Content View file in the Project Navigator, and let's create a new group folder from this selection. Then give it the name Screens. In this folder, we will place all the main screens of this iPhone application. Next, select the root folder, and let's create a new empty folder in it. For this group, give it the name Views. In this folder, we will place some small individual views. We can treat them as components that we can reuse from time to time, or we can just expand them from our existing screens and keep them concise. And finally, we need to create another folder in which we will hold some utility functions and such them. For example, we can add a Swift file here that will play a sound effect. Give it the name Utilities. And we are done here. Splendid. Now let's move on to the next job. Settings. Sometimes we need to take extra steps before we can start coding on our project. Sometimes we just jump into it immediately. It always depends. In our case, it is a must. That's why we need to select the main project in the Project Navigator pane. As I show you, it will bring us the project settings window. As you can see, the first menu item in the tab bar is so-called General Settings. And under this menu, we can find the Deployment Info section. In this place, first, Make sure that the target iOS version is 15 or higher. The second thing that we need to change is the device orientation, if it's necessary. Then check the portrait option as I do. The reason behind it is that this iPhone app works best in portrait mode. Now let's see how things work so far, shall we? Testing. We will need to build and run this project either in the simulator or on a real device to check our app. Click on the Run button on the toolbar and see what will happen. As you can see, there is the app icon that we added to this project on the home screen. Shortly after it, the app starts launching. I paused the video to show the empty screen that we can see during this initial launch period. Developers call this a launch screen, and by default, it is an empty screen. It could be a white or black screen, depending on the appearance of the device. The duration of how long we can see it depends on many things. For example, when we install a new application downloaded from the App Store, then during the first launch, our application initializes many things to run smoothly later on. This so-called cold launch could take some seconds at the first time. However, each additional launch will decrease the duration of how long this launch screen appears on the screen. Not to forget to mention that if we have the latest and best performing iPhone device, then there may be no launch screen visible at all. It always depends on many things, as I told you before, but one thing is sure, it shouldn't be an empty screen. Apple gives us the ability to add some static and only visual elements to it. And this is what we will do shortly after this test. The next thing. After the launch, we must see the default Hello World welcome message on the screen. Okay. There is nothing special there, but let's see how this app works when we rotate it from portrait to horizontal, shall we? If you are using the simulator for testing, then we can rotate the simulator window by pressing the Command plus left arrow or right arrow keys. And there it goes. Have you noticed that this welcome message followed the rotation? Let me show you again. That's strange, isn't it? We explicitly told in the settings that we want this app to work only in portrait mode. Then why does this rotation happen? My answer, made by many years of development, is that Xcode is not perfect. And we sometimes need to deal with certain annoying little things. And knowing that software engineers at Apple are working on improving it year by year gives us hope. In my opinion, hands down, Xcode is still the best tool to develop applications for Apple platforms. But back to this quirky behavior. It's not hard to fix it at all if you know where to find its bug. That said, let's go for a quick bug hunting. Problem solving. Jump back to Xcode. And let's navigate to the Info tab item as I show you. Under this menu, you will see a property list. With this property list, developers can manipulate some aspects of how applications work. This property list consists of key and value pairs in each line, as you can notice. And this is the place where redundant information avoids us forcing the portrait mode. Search for the line where you can see the supported interface orientations for iPhone key option. Now pay close attention to each piece of information I give you, because editing this property list is not easy. First, click on the right chevron icon before this list as I do. This action unfolds the extra information that was added when we created this project from the default iOS template at the beginning. Watch out for the two landscape values in this list item. These are the landscape left and right orientations. We do not need them since these options prevent us from using the app in only portrait mode. To get rid of them, simply click on the gray minus button as I show you. If you did it correctly, then only the portrait option remained under this setting. Now, if we build and run the project, then we should see the result of that. So let's do it right now. Try to rotate the device and check out what's happening on the screen. If everything goes right, we shouldn't see the welcome message rotating on the screen in the landscape mode. Can you see it? Our fix works like a charm. And from now on, users can use this application only in portrait orientation. Now, please jump back to Xcode, and let's continue adding a simple launch screen to this project. Alright, we must be on the same info menu as before. And now we need to find the launch screen settings in the property list. Here it is. The first step is to unfold the list item as I show you. As you can see, there is an empty dictionary in it. We won't bother with adding a storyboard-based launch screen this time. Instead, we will add a new entry by clicking on the plus button. So please, let's do it as I show you. After clicking on the plus button, a new drop-down menu will appear for us. From this menu, select the background color option as I do. By selecting this option, Xcode will add this new key to the launch screen. The last thing that we need to do here is to add some value to this key. Please click on the empty key cell in the value columns and enter the following string. Color, blue. Are you done? Nice job. Guess what? Our new launch screen is done. Now, without further ado, let's check out how this new launch screen works. Build and run the project. If you pay close attention to the screen, you should see a nice blue screen. Congratulations, no matter how long this launch screen is visible for the users. This blue color fits better than the previous empty white screen. From the beginning until now, we have accomplished many things that were necessary for this project. Now, we will move on and start coding. Our goal with this tutorial is to lay out every essential thing for the upcoming advanced sections. Basic functionality. That's being said, we're going to develop the most needed functionality of this application. But don't worry too much, since it won't take long. And by the end of this lesson, everything will be ready for us. We will continue our work by creating 2 additional screens. Go to the Screens folder. And let's add a new swift.I file to it. Give it the name Onboarding View. And save it. Now let's create another swift.I file in the same folder. Give it the name Home View. And save it into the Screen folder as well. Excellent job. Now select the Content View file as I do. This swift.I file will be the central hub of our application, and depending on its current state, it will show either the home screen or the onboarding screen. To achieve this goal, we need to have 2 things. The first thing is to have a property that will hold our application's initial and further state. That said, let's create a particular property for that. Please enter the following code before the body as I show you. App storage. Onboarding. var is onboarding view active. Boolean equals true. First, this new property will set up a new onboarding key in app storage. The first part, this app storage is a special swift.I property wrapper that will use the user's defaults under the hood. Its purpose is to store some value on the device's permanent storage by utilizing a get and set method. The second part, this is a unique key identifier that we can refer to later on. By using this key, we can edit or recall its saved value on the device storage. The third part, this is the actual property name that we can use in this swift.I file. The fourth part, this is where we set the initial value of the property. In our case, this value will be initialized only one time with a true value. This is an essential thing, and I will reveal something crucial about it a little bit later. The logic behind this code is that when users start the application, the very first screen they should see is the onboarding screen. The next step is to create a conditional statement. And in this new condition, we can display the appropriate screen depending on the actual state of this new property stored in the app storage. That's being said, replace the entire welcome message with this new code. Z-stack. If is onboarding view active. Onboarding view. Else. Home view. The Z-stack is a container, and we can use it to display different views on top of each other. And in this container, we created the main functionality of how this application works. If the isOnboarding view active Boolean property is true, then it will display the onboarding view. In the opposite case, users will see the home view. Nothing fancy there. With this little code, we are basically done here. But to make this work properly, we need to edit the other 2 screens. Onboarding screen. Please select the onboarding view file in the project. Then replace the welcome message with this code. Text, onboarding. Font, large title. After then, Command plus click on the text view to reveal a contextual menu as I show you. From this list, please select the Embed in VStack option. Then add this code to it. Spacing 20. Next, add this code to its ending as well. New comment, the end of the VStack. By the way, this vertical stack container will allow us to add more views after each other. That's being said, let's add a new button after the text view, shall we? Enter this code. Button. Action. New comment. Some action. Text. Start. We want to navigate users to the home view when they tap on this button. You know what? We can do that effortlessly by changing the value of the onboarding key that we have just stored in the content view screen. But to achieve this goal, first, we need to create a new property to access this key using the app storage property wrapper. Enter this code at the top. App storage. Onboarding. var is onboarding view active. Boolean equals true. As you can see, this code is identical to our previous one. And if you are an experienced developer coming from another field than app development with the swift.UI framework, then you might be confused by the end part of this code. It seems that we are setting a new value for this property again, but in reality, this special app storage property wrapper works differently. This true value will only be added to this property when the program does not find the onboarding key in the user default storage. Just let me paraphrase it in another way. If our program finds the onboarding key in the user default storage, then it will skip this initialization, and since we have initialized this onboarding key in the previous file, therefore the end part of this code will be ignored. So this is how we can access the previously stored value of the onboarding key. I hope you are not confused anymore by how this special app storage property wrapper works in swift.UI. Now, let's go down to business because we still have some things to do before calling the day. Please, navigate to the button's action and replace the comment with this code. Is onboarding view active? Equals false. This is where we change the actual value of the property from true to false, so the program can switch the onboarding screen to the home screen. This screen change will be automatically done once the program notices the changes in the property. This is the beauty of writing code in swift.UI's declarative style. The only thing that we still need to do is to repeat this process in the home view, so users can go back to the onboarding view if they want. Home screen. Open the home view file and change the text view with this new code. Text. Home. Font. Large title. This text view and its modifier will show a big text indicating that we are on the home screen. Easy peasy, isn't it? Now let's practice what we have learned so far. First, we will work on the layout a little bit. Embed the text view into a new vertical stack container, as I show you. vStack. Spacing. 20. New comment. The end of the vertical stack container. After that, let's create a new button below the text view. Enter this code. Button. Action. New comment. Some action. Text. Restart. With that, our layout of this screen is done for now. Now, in order to change back the home screen to the onboarding screen, we will need access to the value of the onboarding key stored on the device. By using the app storage property wrapper, we can do it with ease, so let's do it. Enter this code at the top. App storage. Onboarding. var is onboarding view active. Boolean equals false. Please do not forget we do not set the property's value here. It's just for safety reasons in case the program does not find the onboarding key in the permanent storage. The last task is to change the actual value of this property when users tap on the button. To do that, please navigate to the button and replace the comment with this new code. Is onboarding view active? Equals true. And guess what? We have just finished this long lesson by laying down all the necessary settings and basic functionality of this application. Final testing. But before we jump to the next lesson, we should test how our code works. To do that, please build and run the project. Then let's test the app either on your iPhone device or in the simulator. After the launch, we should see the onboarding screen. This is the first screen that users should see when they start the app the first time. It just works as it is supposed to do. Next, let's see what will happen when we tap on the Start button. There it goes. The onboarding screen was replaced by the home screen. How cool is that? At first sight, this app looks like a very basic one. But behind the scene, we have just learned how to use the special app storage property wrapper to store, edit, and recall its value using the device's permanent storage. To check it out, please close the application and reopen it. If everything goes well, then we should see the home screen again. And there it is. By tapping on the Restart button, we can change and store the new state of the app. So next time we open this app, we can see the onboarding screen once again. Alright, I really hope you enjoyed this introductory lecture, and you are ready to deep dive into some pretty advanced coding with swift.UI in the upcoming classes. I can promise you that you will have a pretty darn good app designed on your hand by the end of the following lecture. Are you ready for some fun with swift.UI? Then see you at the class. In this swift.UI tutorial, we will create a fully fledged onboarding screen in Xcode. As you can see, this screen consists of three main parts. The first section is the header. The second one is the center. And finally, the footer is the last section. We will create them step by step in top-down order like a waterfall. That's being said, we'll start with creating a large title with a subheader for the header section. After that, we will create a ring and put a professional illustration on top of it. And at the end of the tutorial, we will focus on developing the layout of the complex button component. Each design of these UI elements is the final version without animations and interactivity. The only exception is the red button at the bottom, so we can navigate to the home screen and back from it to the onboarding. By the end of this class, we will have a fantastic onboarding screen waiting for us to put some life into it later on. Alright, without further ado, let's open Xcode together and start developing the layout of this fun design. First of all, open the onboarding view file and navigate to the body section. Here we need to embed the vertical stack container into a new Z stack. Command plus click on its name and select the embed option from the context menu as I show you. You can follow me if you wish by adding new comments to each container element. Enter new comment, the end of the V stack. Then, another new comment, the end of the Z stack container. These comments are not mandatory to use, but, after all, they can help us give information about which ending parenthesis belongs to a particular UI element. Now, we will add a new color view inside this new container. Enter the following code with me. Color, blue. Ignores safe area. Edges. Because this Z stack expands its size on the screen. Therefore, we can create a full screen background by adding a color view inside it. The colors modifier is self-explanatory as well if you take a glance at the preview. Okay, let's move on, since we won't use the previously created code. Then go to the vertical stack container and delete everything inside it. After that, let's define each major layout section by entering new comments for them. Enter this code. New comment, mark, header. New comment, mark, center. New comment, mark, footer. Super. As I told you before, we will start creating the header section. Please navigate to this section, start adding this code to it. Spacer. VStack. Spacing 0. New comment, the end of the header section. After this code, we need to add some content. Text. Share. Font. System. Size 60. Font weight. Heavy. Foreground color. White. Now let's add a subheader after this title, shall we? Enter this code. Text. Double quote 3 times. Then let's repeat it. Double quote 3 times. As you may know, we can add not only single line strings to a text view but a multi-line, longer text as well. The only thing we need to do is wrap this text into 3 double quotes at the beginning and the end. Now, let's continue entering some content. It's not how much we give, but how much love we put into giving. Then, let's add some modifiers to this text view. Enter. Font. Title 3. Font weight. Light. Foreground color. White. Multiline text alignment. Center. Padding. Horizontal. 10. And there it is. Our header section is done with this little code. And we can continue focusing on the center section. Also, please just ignore the fact the spacer pushed down the header on the screen. It's temporary. And by the end of this tutorial, everything will be placed correctly. Now let me show you something. Did you know that we can fold in and fold out the code of any views in Xcode? And by doing that, we can hide this part in the editor and make some room for other codes in the window. Just follow me, and you will see what I am talking about. To do that, first, we make sure that the cursor is somewhere in this vertical stack container. Now, let's press the following keys at the same time. Option, Command, left arrow. Did you notice how Xcode folded in this entire VStack into a one-liner? As you can see, the 3 dots indicator inside the curly brackets informs us that there is a hidden code snippet in it. How cool is that? Center section. Let's continue our work by entering the following code. Z-stack. New comment. The end of the center section. Spacer. As you can see, this spacer pushes up the header. Now, let us create a ring inside the Z-stack with this code. Z-stack. New comment. The end of the Z-stack. After that, enter this code. Circle. Stroke. White. Opacity. 0.2. Line width. 40. Frame. Width. 260. Height. 260. Alignment. Center. This code will create a simple ring. However, we are not done with it yet. Let's add another circle with different width and opacity on top of this one. Circle. Stroke. White. Opacity. 0.2. Line width. 80. Frame. Width. 260. Height. 260. Alignment. Center. And there it is. Now it's time to add the illustration and make the center section complete. Navigate the cursor after the inner Z stack and enter this code. Image. Character -1. Resizable. Scaled to fit. With this bit of code, we have just accomplished the design in the center section. I hope you like how easy it is to build up a friendly user interface layout with swift.UI. Now let's practice how we can fold in this block of code, shall we? First, make sure that the cursor is still somewhere in the center section. Then, press the Command plus left arrow keys at once time as I show you. Not every developer uses this handy feature. But if you like it, then nothing can stop you from using it. Footer section. We can move on by developing the last section on this screen. The custom button that we are going to create is more complex than it looks at first sight. Not to mention that code will be much longer than the previous section's code. First of all, we need to create a new container. Enter this code. Z-stack. New comment. The end of the footer section. Before we continue, we will need to define all major parts of this custom component. Having said that, here they go. The first part is a static background. The second part is a simple call to action text. Then, the third part is a capsule shape, and this shape will change its width when users are dragging the button. Finally, the fourth part is the actual draggable circle shape with a right chevron symbol. In this tutorial, we will focus on creating these UI elements step by step. However, in a later class, we will learn how we can make them interactive. After all, this is one main objective of this mini application. Now, let's continue starting with the first step, shall we? Enter this code with me. Capsule. Fill. Color. White. Opacity. 0.2. Capsule. Fill. Color. White. Opacity. 0.2. Padding. 8. These shapes are way too big for what we want. That's why we need to add some modifiers to the container. Navigate the cursor to the end of the Z stack and add this code to it. Frame. height 80, alignment center, padding. These modifiers will add some required constraints to this design. The height of the UI component is fixed, and the padding is also necessary to avoid the screen edges. It looks much better now, don't you think? As you can see, by adding some padding to the second shape, we created a similar design to the ring in the central section. This consistency makes our design thinking professional, and the final product will look great. Now, let's move on. We will continue with adding the more important parts before we deal with this second part. So, let's do it right now. Please navigate to the third section. And let's enter this code. H-stack. Capsule. Fill. Color. Color red. Frame. Width. 80. As you can see in the preview, the capsule shape will cover the entire component by default, but if we add a particular width constraint to it, which is identical to the container's height, then we will get a full circle. Please keep in mind that this width value will play an important role later on. We need to add a spacer to this horizontal stack container to push it to the left edge. Enter this code. Spacer. There it is. Basically, this capsule shape will work like an expandable background behind the actual button that we're going to create soon. Let's continue with creating the actual button with the chevron symbol. Navigate to the fourth part of the component and start coding. Z-stack. Foreground color. White. Frame. Width. 80. Height. 80. Alignment. Center. Now let's add some views into this container. Circle. Fill. Color. Color red. Circle. Fill. Black. Opacity. 0.15. Padding. 8. After that, we will add a chevron symbol on top of this circle shape. Enter this code. Image. System name. Chevron. Dot. Right. Dot. 2. Font. System size. 24. Weight. Bold. And there it is. We are done with the button's design. However, we need to move it to the left edge like we did the capsule shape before. To do that, first, we need to embed this Z-stack into a new horizontal stack container. So let's do it. We just need to add a new spacer after this Z-stack and watch what's happening in the preview. Enter. Spacer. As you can see, our button is pushed to the left edge, and this button covers the capsule shape beneath it. Great job so far. As you may figure out by now, these two UI elements will move together when users start dragging the circle-shaped button to the right side. We are almost done with creating the design for the onboarding screen. Now, go back to the second part, which is still missing. It will be a simple text view. Enter the following code. Text. Get started. Font. System. Title 3. Design. Rounded. Font weight. Bold. Foreground color. White. Offset. X. 20. I hope that you noticed why it was necessary to offset this text view a little bit. After that, the only thing that we need to do is to ensure that users tap on the button. Then, the program replaces the onboarding screen with the home screen. And we will develop this functionality by adding a basic on-tap gesture to the circle-shaped button. That being said, scroll down to the end of this view and add a new modifier to it. Enter this code there. On-tap gesture. Is onboarding view active? Equals false. It is as simple as that. What do you think about it? Do you like the simplicity of this declarative code that swift.UI brings to us? I hope so. You know what? It's time to test our application after all this development, don't you think? Let's build and run the project. Shortly after the launch, we can check out the layout order and test the button's functionality as well. As you can see, the design of the onboarding screen with its main UI sections is done. How about that? Right. Pretty exciting. Now let's play a little bit with it. Please tap on the red button, and let's see how this simple on-tap gesture operates. And, after tapping on the button, the home screen replaces the onboarding screen. Our code works like a charm. How cool is that? Did you like how we just built up this layout step by step? If yes, then you will enjoy the next lesson as well. In the following tutorial, we will finish the design process by creating a whole new home screen. And to make it slightly more advanced for you, I will show you how we can develop a reusable UI component in swift.UI. Until then, happy coding! In this swift.UI tutorial, we will continue our development work where we finished in the previous class. Our goal is to create a complete design of the home screen, so when we tap on the main button on the onboarding screen, then this elegant and aesthetically pleasing design shows up. As you may notice, the home screen layout consists of 3 parts, similar to its counterpart. It's pretty simple, so it shouldn't be too hard to create it, I guess. During the development, we will get familiar with the new button styles in the latest release of swift.UI, and to make this lesson slightly more challenging for you, we will also learn how to create a reusable UI component. Alright, without further ado, let's open Xcode and start coding. Home screen. First of all, please open the Home View file. Then scroll down to the Body section. Next, we will replace the text view with some helpful comments. Enter the following code. New comment. Mark. Header. New comment. Mark. Center. New comment. Mark. Footer. Okie dokie. Let's start the development with the first section, shall we? Header section. First, navigate the cursor to the header and enter this code. Spacer. Great. Now we will add a new image with some modifiers after it. Enter. Image. Character. Dash. 2. Resizable. Scaled to fit. Padding. Super. With this bit of code, we are almost done creating the header section. The only thing that is still missing here is the ring design, but don't worry because we will work on it soon, at the end of this short lesson. Now, let's jump to the next section. Center section. All we need to do is to enter a well-formatted quote here. So, let's do it. Text. The time that leads to mastery is dependent on the intensity of our focus. Font. Title, 3. Font weight, light. Foreground color, secondary. Multiline text alignment, center. Padding. Awesome. The center area with this text is done. We can move on to the last section. Footer section. As you know, there is a button in the bottom region that we previously created, and we can see the default button design on the preview. The accent color always determines the color of the button. Please keep in mind the following rule. Suppose there is no custom accent color defined in the project's assets catalog. In that case, each UI element inherits a default color from the system, which Apple may change anytime in the future. Since we created a custom blue color, therefore we can see this used by this button. Before we make this default look more prominent, we first need to push up the header and center sections. To do that, we need to add a new spacer above this button. So let's do it. Spacer. Great job so far. We can finally focus on the button after adding more space between the bottom and the center area. First, we will add a new system symbol before the text inside this button. Enter this code. Image. System name, arrow, dot, triangle, dot, 2, dot, circle path, dot, circle, dot, fill. Image scale, large. This long declarative name accurately describes the symbol image that we needed. Please notice that we did not have to wrap the image and the text views into a horizontal stack container. The reason behind that: when we use two or more UI elements inside as a button label, then swift.UI automatically renders the horizontal stack layout for it. How cool is that? I just love this developer-friendly behavior, and I hope you do too. After adding an image to this button, we can work on the text's appearance a little bit. Let's add these two new modifiers to it, shall we? Font, system, title, 3, design, rounded, font weight, bold. The appearance of this text is similar to the button on the onboarding screen. It's much better now. However, I still find it less attractive. Can we make it better somehow? Fortunately, Apple engineers are continuously improving the swift.UI framework, and the latest iteration of it gives us a brand new button system with many handy features. Button styles. That's being said, we can improve the button's design by adding some specific modifiers to this. To do that, please navigate to the end of the button as I do. Then enter the following code. Button style. Bordered, prominent. Button border shape. Capsule. Control size. Large. And there it goes. It's pretty impressive, isn't it? These modifiers are quite self-explanatory. Do you agree with me? And with this little code, the button conforms to the overall visual design of this application. How cool is that? Okay, I have to admit, it wasn't too hard at all. But you know what? Are you ready to do something new? Something interesting in the rest of the tutorial? Right. Then let's create a reusable UI component and have some fun with it. User interface component. Our goal is to create a reusable UI component from the existing ring design, such that we can embed this ring with different parameters into the onboarding and the home screens. We start by opening the onboarding screen. After that, we need to find the ring design in this file. Go to the center section and carefully select out the entire code of the inner Z-stack container. As I show you, we need to cut out this code snippet to the clipboard. It's easy peasy so far. The next step is to create a new swift.UI file in the Views folder. So, let's do it. Give this swift.UI file the following name and save it. Circle, Group, View. Now, in this file, we will replace the welcome message with the code from the clipboard. Are you done? Perfect. If you followed my instructions carefully, then we should see the ring on the preview. And there is the first obstacle that we need to overcome through. The color of the ring is white. That's why we cannot see it on the preview. Of course, we can switch the device's appearance from light to dark in the preview, but we can do it even better. The better solution is to prepare the preview for testing our design in a different environment. To make it happen, please scroll down to the preview section. As I show you, we need to embed the circle group view into a new Z-stack container. After that, let's add a new color view before the circle group view. Enter this code. Color. Color blue. Ignores safe area. All. Edges. All. With this code, we can simulate the onboarding view's blue background. And with that, the ring has been revealed for us in the preview. Now we can focus on more advanced things. Ring component. Our ultimate goal with this ring component is the following. We want this UI component to be used in multiple environments on top of different background colors. To achieve this goal, we need to create two properties representing the color and opacity attributes of the ring component. So, let's create these new properties right now. Enter the following code at the top. Add state var shape color color. Add state var shape opacity double. Now, let's hold on a sec and talk about what's happening there. First, we added state property wrapper to these properties. With that, we can change the values of these properties. The second important thing that we keep in mind is that we did not initialize these properties with any default values. And this is what we wanted exactly. We want to add particular color and opacity values to this ring later on. For now, we just told the program that there are color and opacity properties without any default value. This code works without any problem. However, the preview is broken because it doesn't know what to do with the missing empty properties. Can you see the red error sign in the preview? Xcode gives us more information about this error if we click on the red shape as I show you. Please scroll down a little bit and click on this red button. As I told you before, the preview needs more information about these color and opacity parameters. If we click on the Fix button, then we can insert some mock data, and the errors will be dismissed instantly. So, let's do it. Enter. Shape color, white. Shape opacity, 0.2. The error messages have gone. And if you paid attention to the preview, you should see that nothing has changed so far. It happens because, so far, we just created these empty properties. But we never told the program where we wanted to use them. I'm pretty sure that you have already figured out that the next step is to change the stroke modifier in each circle view. Having said that, please jump to the first circle and replace the color value with our new property. Enter this code. Circle, stroke, shape color, opacity, shape opacity. Then let's jump to the second circle and repeat the process. Circle, stroke, shape color, opacity, shape opacity. With the help of these properties, we can now modify the ring's look in every place where we want to embed this component. But enough with the talk, and let's see how it works in action, shall we? Reusable component. First, please switch back to the onboarding view. And let's embed our ring component before the image view, as I show you. Enter. Circle group view. Shape color, white. Shape opacity, 0.2. With this code, we got the same design as it was before. Now let's see how we can reuse this ring component again. This time we will embed it into the home view. So let's switch to this file. But before we do that, first, we will need to embed the image into a new container. So let's do it right now. Command plus click on the image name and let's select the Embed in Z-Stack option from the context menu as I do. Now everything is ready to embed a new ring component beneath the illustration. Enter the following code. Circle group view. Shape color, gray. Shape opacity, 0.1. And there it is. As you can notice, this time we added different colors and opacity values for this ring. And this is the way how we can develop a reusable user interface component with variable attributes. How cool is that? As you know the drill by now, we will test the application. You can either run it on your real device or use the simulator. Testing. After the launch, the first thing that we can see is one of the instances of the ring component. Again, this is the same design as it was before. But I want to emphasize one thing about it. Later on, we will add animation to it, but we will also make it interactive. Until then, let's check out how the completed home view, shall we? Let's tap on the red button at the bottom. And there it is. This design is pretty impressive. Do you agree with me? I hope that you enjoyed this safely.the tutorial. And I can tell you that this was just the beginning. You can think about the first 3 lessons as a warming up. From now on, we will add more interactivity and animations to this application. For example, we will have developed a fully functional custom button by the end of the following lecture. Such a great button that will really shine when users use it on their hands. Until then, happy coding and see you in the class. The sole purpose of this safely.the tutorial is to develop the snappy feature of the custom button. Nothing more, nothing less. But it is a good thing since this is the one feature that makes this application so great. That said, let's see how this unique behavior works in action. The first thing worth knowing about it: by the end of this lecture, users can drag and swipe the button in the right direction. The second point: and by doing that, the button's shape will grow horizontally as well. The third point: when we stop dragging the button halfway and we release our fingers from the screen, then watch out for what's happening. Did you see that the button snapped to back its starting position? Awesome. The fourth point: now let's see what happens when we swipe the button more than halfway, shall we? And there it is. The button snapped to the right edge of this component. And this will trigger the screen change. How cool is that? Let's do it again. As you can see, this behavior is quite complex. And we need to develop these 4 main features in order to make it works. Alright. Without further ado, let's open Xcode and start working on it. Code preparation. Would you please open the onboarding file and scroll to the top? We will create 2 new properties here. The reason behind it is that we need to know 2 important pieces of information about this button. These are the button's width and the button's offset size. That's being said, let's start with creating them, shall we? Add state private var button width double equals UI screen dot main dot bounds dot width minus 80. The button's width property is the actual screen's width minus 80 points. And this width value depends on the actual iPhone device's screen size. So the button's width is the largest on the iPhone Max and the smallest on the iPhone mini devices. But in each case, there will be 40 points padding added on the left and the right edges. Also, this is a computed property and we won't change it. Please, keep in mind that its primary purpose is to establish some constraints to the button's horizontal movement. Now let's move on, and let's create the second property. Enter the following code. Add state private var button offset cg float equals 0. This property will represent the offset value in the horizontal direction. As you know, the button has 2 states. There is an active state when users are dragging it, and there is an idle state when the button is inactive. That's why we initialized this offset size with a 0 value. And this offset value will constantly be changing during the dragging activity. Alright, enough with the talk. After all this prep work, we need to implement all this information into code. But before we continue the development, first, I will hide the sidebar and turn on the minimap. This minimap can help developers to navigate from one point to another one with lightning speed. As you can notice, we can see the main 3 sections of this layout in this minimap. But not only that, if we hover over the cursor on this minimap while pressing the command key, we can get more information about the code structure. How cool is that? Now back to work. First, we will add this new button width property to the footer section. To scroll down to the end of this section, we can do it by clicking this part on the minimap as I show you. Awesome. Now, please insert the cursor into the frame modifier and enter this code there. Frame width button width. This will add a width constraint to this button. After that, we need to find the draggable red circle button inside this footer section and add a new offset modifier to it. Scroll up a little bit and add this new modifier to the Z stack as I do. Offset X 120. Can you see how we move the red button to the right? You can play with this offset value if you wish and start putting together all puzzle pieces in your head about how this component will work at the end. First, we will focus only on the red circle shape. Of course, we won't use this arbitrary offset value for real. My only goal was to demonstrate to you what's coming up. Please, modify the offset value to 0 as I do. Okie dokie. The second step is to replace the very basic on-tap gesture with a new drag gesture. So let's do it right now. Enter the following replacement code. Gesture. Drag gesture. New comment. The end of the gesture block. With this little code, we have just added a brand new drag gesture modifier to the red circle button. However, it will not do anything until we say what to do. Drag gesture. You know, every drag gesture has 2 particular states. The first state is when the drag user activity is happening. The second one is when this drag activity has ended. We can tell the program what we want to do with the red button by knowing this information. Let's start by adding a new unchanged modifier to this drag gesture, shall we? Enter this code. Drag gesture, unchanged. Gesture, in. You can see a new parameter called gesture inside the actions closure. And this parameter contains the gesture's new value. This value gives us information about the actual movement. Now we can put any actions inside it. And these actions will be triggered every time the gesture's value changes. Please keep in mind that what we are going to enter inside this closure is specific to our custom button. Enter the following code. If gesture dot translation dot width greater than 0, button offset equals gesture dot translation dot width. Let's hold on a sec and talk about what this code does, shall we? As you can see, there is a conditional statement. And the reason behind it, that we want to run any actions inside it only when users drag the red circle shape in the right direction. It's obvious since we want to allow only a left to right movement at first. Of course, when the button is already dragged to the right somewhat, users will be allowed to drag it to the left. But the first dragging must be initiated from the left to right direction. I hope that you can understand. The next thing is the actual action. It's not hard to understand this code at all. We only added a new value to the offset property about how much we move our finger on the screen in the horizontal direction. So far, so good. However, if we build and run the application, we could see nothing visible on the screen. To move the red circle button, first, we need to change its offset value. So let's do that. Navigate to the offset modifier and replace the 0 value with the button offset property. Enter this code. Offset x button offset. As a side note to this, when the program recognizes any value changes, then we can see the button's movement in the horizontal direction. But enough with the talk, and let's see how this works in action, shall we? Build and run the project as usual. After the launch, we will tap and drag the red button to the right. And there it is. As you can see, the drag feature works as it should. However, as you can notice on the screen, nothing stops us from moving the button outside the component. You know, developers often find themselves in such situations when they can take only one step in the right direction. Our initial goal was to achieve this movement, and we succeeded by that. Now, we need to deal with all different kinds of scenarios, such as preventing users from moving the button outside its scope. And it is precisely what we will do until we cover all possible scenarios. Feature enhancement. Please switch back to Xcode, and let's find the place where we can add new constraints to the dragging gesture. As you can see, previously, we created a conditional statement to control the initial movement. This is a great candidate for us to make the conditional part more robust. Navigate the cursor to this line and enter the following code. $sign. Button offset. Less or equal than. Button width. -80. This new part of the conditional statement will prevent users from moving the red button outside. You may wonder why we subtract 80 points from the button's width. As you know, the red button size is 80 by 80 points. And unlike most other UI elements in the SwiftUI framework, ZStack uses the top left corner coordinate system. We ensure that the button keeps its position inside the component regarding the horizontal directions with this subtraction. There is not much to talk about it. Let's see how this code works in action. Please, build and run the project again. After the launch, please try to move the red button outside the component and see what will happen. And there it is. If you followed me precisely, then you will not be able to move out the red button. We have just vastly improved this feature by adding such a little code to this program. Now close the application and let me show another thing. You should notice, after the restart, that when we leave the red button somewhere between the two edges of the component, then our button stays and they're doing nothing. And what do you think about it? As I mentioned to you a couple of times before, our goal is to develop a brand new UI element from scratch with custom features. And as developers, we are responsible for any aspect of how this user interface works. What is missing now is the very next step we will work on. Our next goal is to move back the red button to its original position each time when we stop the dragging movement with our finger on the screen. Having said that, let's jump back to Xcode and let's make this happen. Feature improvement. Before, I mentioned that any drag gestures has two modifiers. And it's time to put in action the on-ended drag gesture modifier. Would you please place the cursor outside the on-changed modifier and start coding? On-ended underscore in button offset equals 0. And that's all that we needed to it in order to make this feature work. We do not need any parameters here. We just told the program that we want the red button in position 0 when we stop dragging it. Nothing fancy there. And the beauty in the swift.UI framework is that we can accomplish so many things with so little code. Now, let's see this code in action, shall we? After the launch, we need to drag the button to the right and release our fingers from the screen. If everything goes well, then we should see how the red button was snapped to its starting position. It works without any problem as it should do. How fantastic is that? Let's try it out a couple of times. There is no doubt that we have made great progress in developing this component so far. I can just hope that we are on the same page. But you know what? We can make it even better. So far, no matter where we release the button, it will be moved back to 0. Yeah, this is not what we exactly want, to be frank. I think that it would be much better if we could snap this button to the right edge in certain circumstances. What about if we split off the component into two portions? With this plan, we could move the button back to 0 position in the left half area, and we can snap the button to the right edge in the right half area. Do you like this plan? I hope so. Then let's jump back to Xcode as I do. We are still working on the on-ended drag gesture modifier since this new feature is related to it. Please enter a new line inside this modifier. And let's enter this specific code. If button offset greater than button width divided by 2, button offset equals button width minus 80. Is onboarding view active equals false. Else button offset equals 0. In this simple new conditional statement, we compared the button's offset and width values to each other. In the first part of it, if the red button is on the right area, then we snap it to the right edge of the component. Moreover, we switch the screen statement from the onboarding screen to the home screen. In case of it, when the red button is in the left area and users release their fingers from the screen, then we move back this button to the left edge of the component. It's as simple as that. But don't take my word for granted. Let's test this new code. After the launch, first, we can check out what's happening when we release the button in the left half of the component. Did you catch it? The red button was instantly moved back to its starting position. Now, what's about the right side? Let's drag and move the button to the right half of the component and check out what will happen. And there it goes. We snap the button to the right edge of the component and switch screens as well. How fancy is that? The only thing that is still not done yet is the button's background. So far, we just focused on the red circle button and abandoned its background shape. We need to work on this background shape in the rest of this tutorial to complete our work. Deformable shape. Let's switch back to Xcode, and let's find the capsule section in the footer block. We can even use the minimap to do that. If we look at this code, then we can realize that by providing the same height and width for this shape, we created a circle shape. And this was totally in line with our intentions. Users must see a circle button in the inactive state. However, when they drag and move this button, then this geometry shape should change its dimension horizontally. And this is the perfect time and place to make this feature happen. First, we will replace the hard-coded width value with a changeable value. Enter this code, frame modifier, width, button offset, plus 80. Again, you may ask why we added 80 points to this offset size. Please do not forget that the initial value of the button's offset is 0. And that's why we needed to add this 80 to it. So we got a circle shape in the button's inactive state. So, what do you think about this program? Shouldn't we just run a final test and check out how this pretty button works in action? I have got you. Let's build and run the project before we call it a day, shall we? After the launch, we can finally test every aspect and feature of this complex button. Let's check out how the snapback feature works. Can you see the changes in the button's background? It works like a charm. Now let's drag and move this button till to the right edge of the component. There are no glitches in how this button operates. Now, let's play a little bit with it. Alright, by the way, how much do you like this recently developed custom button component? I genuinely hope that you enjoyed this step-by-step tutorial and you are eager to do more. There is no question about how great you have done so far. So, please, let me congratulate you. You really, really deserve my honest appreciation. Also, in the following tutorials, we will make our application even better by adding impressive animation and other interactivity to it. Are you ready for the next challenge? I hope so. Until then, happy coding. In this tutorial, we will give life to this application by adding ultra-fine animations. First, we will animate the header, the footer, and the center part of the onboarding screen. Then we will animate the transition from the initial screen to the home screen as well. As you can see on the home screen, there is an illustration of a woman. While she is meditating, we will make her levitate by moving her position up and down continuously. We will also learn how to develop a one-time animation when a UI element first appears on the screen. Then we will figure out how to delay a specific animation using the main activity thread of the device. We will even cover how to repeat animations forever. As you can see, there are many things to learn about how animation works in the SwiftUI framework. And you know, by the end of the first part of the animation series, this application will become more professional due to those small details we will focus on. Now, if this is something you want to learn, then open Xcode and start coding along with me. First of all, please open the onboarding file. Here we will create a new property for tracking the state of the animation. Enter the following code inside the main view but outside its body block. Add state private var is animating boolean equals false. As you can see, this is animating property has got the state property wrapper so that we can change its value later on. To put it simply, you should think about this animation property as some kind of switcher. It has two states, and if it is true, then it will start the animation. On the contrary, if this value is false, then the animation won't start. We will decide what to animate, how to animate, and even when to start the animation. Okay, enough with the talk, and let's put this into action. Please scroll down to the end of the main Z-stack container as I do. And let's add a new modifier to it. Enter this code. On, appear. Perform. Is, animating. Equals, true. Super. This code switches the animation variable's value from false to true. Then the onboarding view appears on the screen. And this value change triggers the animation immediately. After that, we need to decide which user interface element we want to animate. We will start with the header section. Header animation. Let's navigate back to the end of the header section. And let's add some new modifiers to this vertical stack container. Opacity is animating $1:0. Offset Y is animating $0:-40. Animation ease out. Duration 1. Value is animating. Great job so far. Now let's hold on a sec and talk about this code a little bit. Alright, the first thing that we need to cover is the strange code inside the opacity and offset modifiers. So let's start with this specific Swift code. Ternary operator. You know, Swift has a particular operator called the ternary operator. It works with 3 values at once, which is where its name comes from. The ternary operator checks a condition specified in the first value. And if it's true, then it returns the second value. However, if its value is false, then it returns the third value. To wrap up this information, the ternary operator is a condition plus true or false blocks all in one. It is also split up by a question mark and a colon. Before the question mark, you can see the condition. It says that if the animation variable is true, then the opacity value is 1. On the contrary, if the animation variable is false, then the opacity value is 0. That being said, we start with the 0 value, so we cannot see the header section when the program begins. But soon, when the onboarding view appears on the actual screen, then the program switches this value from false to true. This value change will trigger the animation that we declare later on. And at the end of the animation, the header section will be revealed. Before moving on to the next modifier, keep in mind that we will use this specific ternary operator in Swift very often when adding animations to our application. Alright, as you can see, the next thing that we want to accomplish is a particular sliding down movement by modifying the Y value of the offset. And, after declaring all that we want to animate, finally, we can set up the animation type by adding a new animation modifier to this header section. It's worth knowing how this specific animation works in swift.UI. It has two parts, and the first part is an animation parameter. And for this animation parameter, we decided to add an ease-out animation curve type. This ease-out slows down at the end of the animation with a predefined 1 second duration. The second so-called value parameter is mandatory from iOS 15 and newer. Basically, we have to tell the program what value that causes the change in the animation. In our case, this is the animating variable, but we could have other use cases if we wish. Awesome. Now let's see how this code works in action. Alright, this time we will start the live preview for checking out the animation. We can stop and restart the preview by clicking on the button. As you can see, after we start the live preview, the header section is sliding down and revealing itself. How cool is that? Before we continue, please keep in mind that not every animation works in the live preview, unfortunately. And this is why we are better off testing swift.UI's animations either in simulator or on a real device. Let's move on. Image animation. After that, let's jump to the center section and add some new modifiers to the image view. Enter this code. Opacity is animating (1:0). Animation ease out. Duration 0.5. Value is animating. With this code, we have just created a quick fade-in effect. Fantastic. To test how this animation works, we need to build and run the project in the simulator. So let's do it right now. As soon as the launch ends and the onboarding view appears on the screen, we should see the headers slide down animation and the image fade-in animation. If it happens too quickly to catch it up, then we can close and restart the app again. Can you see the animation? That's what I was talking about. Super. Now, let's continue the work. Footer animation. Please, switch back to Xcode and navigate to the end of the footer section. Similarly to the header section, we will add some initial animation to it. But this time, it will be a slide-up movement. Enter the following code after the padding modifier. Opacity is animating (1:0). Offset Y is animating (0:40). Animation ease out. Duration 1. Value is animating. Nice job. Now, without further ado, let's see how this code works in the simulator. After the launch, we can see how the footer section is sliding up with an opacity fade-in effect. Again, how fantastic is that? All animations start at the same time as soon as the main onboarding view appears on the screen. Later on, we will learn how to delay or schedule an animation in swift.UI. We can even go to the home screen and switch back to see this synchronous animation. And by doing that, we can notice that this transition between these two screens is not so smooth. Yes, you are right. We can improve this by adding this transaction to a new kind of animation function. With animation. To do that, first, we need to switch back to Xcode. Then we need to find the code where we switch from the onboarding screen to the home screen. And there it is. Scroll to the unended modifier in the drag gesture. After that, we need to select the whole if-else conditional statement and cut it out to the clipboard as I show you. Now we will enter a specific animation function there. Enter this code with animation. Animation dot ease out. Duration 0.4. Opening curly bracket. Closing curly bracket. Just hold on a sec before we continue. As you can see, this with animation function is part of the safely.The framework. And it has an animation property that will tell the program what kind of animation it should run when the view's body is recomputing during the screen transaction. We chose the ease out animation with a 0.4 duration. It is as simple as that. Now we can paste the code snippet inside this function from the clipboard, as I show you. To make it clear, we just told the program to run an animation next time when we change from onboarding view to home view. And this transaction will be accomplished with a short and smooth ease out animation. But don't take my word for granted, and let's see how this works on your device or in the simulator. Okay, now if we go to the home screen, then we should see a smooth transaction between the two views. If you are unsure about it, you can increase the duration value up to a couple of seconds and retest this animation. Cool. The application gets better and better after each edition. As you can see, these animations are subtle and non-distractive. Yet, I cannot wait to jump to the next one. Ring animation. Please go back to Xcode and open the circle group view reusable component as I do. The beauty of this code is that if we add any animations to it, then it will run in every instance without writing extra code each time we use it. The process is very similar to the previous one. We start by creating a new variable with a changeable initial value. Enter the following code. At state private var is animating boolean equals false. Of course, we could pick any name for this property, but I like to be consistent, and this is a pretty self-explanatory name, in my opinion. By the way, since it is private property, it will not interfere with the others. Now we need to navigate to the end of the main Z-stack container and add some new modifiers to it. Blur radius is animating 0:10. Opacity is animating 1:0. Scale effect is animating 1:0.5. Animation ease out. Duration 1. Value is animating. On appear. Perform is animating equals true. Alright, what is new in this code is the following. As you can see, this time we will animate a blur and a scale effect in safely.The. And since everything else has been already discussed, therefore the only thing we need to do here is to test how this code works in action. Please build and run the project. Now, if you have Vision 2020, then you can see all animations at first sight. Congrats to you. But if you were me, then we need to play with this app a little bit to check every aspect of the new code. As I mentioned before, these animations with the provided attributes are very gentle, so it makes some time to see what's happening in that short period. Cool. Let's jump to the last animated feature that we need to create before calling it a day. Repeated animation. First, we need to switch back to Xcode and open the home view file as I show you. As I said at the beginning of this lecture, our goal is to create a repeating animation that we will attach to the professional illustration. To make this happen, we need to create a new property that will store the actual state of the animation. Enter the following code. At state private var is animating boolean equals false. Great. By using this property, we can tell some specific instructions to the program about what attributes we want to animate and how long we want to run this animation. Would you please navigate to the image view and add these new modifiers to it? Enter this code. Offset y is animating question mark 35 colon minus 35. Animation. Animation. Ease in, out. Duration 4. Repeat forever. Value is animating. Super. With this code, first, we move up the illustration by 35 points. Then the illustration moves down another 35 points from its original position. The ease in ease out curve will add a slightly dynamic movement to this animation, which will be slowed down by the long duration after all. What is interesting in this specific animation is the repeat forever modifier. That is why this cool animation will not stop in this loop. Okay, our last task is to ensure that this animation will be triggered and started at some point in the timeline. Animation timing. So far, we only use the onAppear modifier to start animations when a particular view appears on the screen. However, we have other tools when we can start an animation. One of these options is triggering animations by any kind of user interactivity. We will cover this topic in the following tutorial. The other option is to use some sort of timing to start the animation. And this is precisely what I will show you soon. First of all, please scroll down to the end of the main vertical stack container. And let's add a new modifier to it. onAppear. Perform, opening curly bracket, closing curly bracket. At there, please hold on a sec and let me tell you why we are still using this modifier. You know, we can only create a timing feature if we have any kind of concrete time as its starter point in the application's timeline. It could be an exact date with time, a notification, and so on. In our case, we will delay the start of the animation using the time when the home view appears on the screen. Now, let's continue our work by entering some new code that we will discuss soon. Dispatch, queue. Main. Async, after. Deadline. Now, plus 3. Execute, opening curly bracket, closing curly bracket, is animating, equals, true. Awesome. After that, we need to talk about what this code does. Dispatch queue. First of all, to make this delay happen, we need to use the application's main thread. Please keep in mind that this dispatch queue is responsible for executing any user or system activity of any application on your device. And these activities could be run either on the main or on the background thread, since we want to delay the animation when this application is active on users' hands. Therefore, we had to choose the main thread. As far as the third part of this extended code, this async after schedules a block of commands, and everything inside it will be executed with the provided attributes. In other words, we are telling the program to run our code inside this closure 3 seconds later from now. And this is how we can schedule a specific task in the main thread of the application. I hope you found this explanation clear and concise. Alright, enough with the talk, and let's check out how this code works in action. To do that, let's start the live preview and watch what's happening there. As soon as we started the live preview, nothing was happening with this image view in the first 3 seconds. But after this 3-second delay, the program executes our code in the main thread, and the levitation begins. As you can see, this code works without any problems. But do you know what? I find this delay a bit too long for this particular animation, and I think we should make it shorter. If you agree with me, then please change the 3 seconds delay to 0.5 seconds as I show you. Super duper. The following is the only thing that we need to change in this view before we finish this lecture. When users switch from this home view to the onboarding view, then it would be nice to have a smooth transaction similar to the previous transaction. And this does not take much effort to make it happen. So please, navigate the cursor to the button's action. And let's wrap it into a new animation function as I show you. Enter the following code with animation, opening curly bracket, closing curly bracket. Then paste the previous code inside this animation function. Is onboarding view active? Equals true. And there it goes. Since we did not choose any specific animation type, therefore the default animation type will run by the swift.UI framework. We have just finished the first part of the animation series. Now, let's build and run this project and test what we have just done so far. Testing. After the launch, we can see all animation in the header, center, and footer sections. They bring some life into this screen. Yet, they don't distract the users at all. How cool is that? Now let's check out the translation from one screen to another. This gentle transition makes a huge difference, making this application even better. Fantastic work. Shortly after we switch to the home screen, we can see the subtle ring animation that will shortly follow the image's looping movement. It is breathtaking, am I right? I hope you like it so much as I do. But if you thought that we were done with swift.To animation, then I have to tell you that more is coming in the following lecture. And by finishing the second part of this animation series, you will learn how to use up user interactions for creating exciting motion effects. The question is the following now. Are you ready to have more fun with swift.To? I hope so. Then, let's see you at the class. In the second part of this animation series, we will develop something really cool feature with swift.To. As you can see in this demo, users can drag and move the illustration on the screen. And when it happens, then it will not only go to the right and the left directions, but it will also rotate until to a certain point. On top of that, as you can see, we will reposition the ring in the opposite direction with a blur effect. This opposite movement creates an illusion of viewport changing. And the combination of these actions will create a beautiful parallax effect at the end. But we won't stop there, since we will also improve the user experience by providing a low-key indicator. This particular user interface element with a two-directional arrow symbol will suggest what is going to happen if users start dragging and moving the main image. How cool is that? Finally, I will share with you a pretty awesome swift.To technique as well. Did you notice that with this dragging gesture, we change different parts on the screen? One of them is the large title at the top. Now, if you are an experienced developer, then you may think that changing the string value of any text view is not that hard at all. And partially, it is true. However, when it comes to adding animation to this value change, you will be surprised. But do you know what? You need to watch the whole video to get my solution for a problem you can face when you try it yourself. Okay, enough with the talk, and let's get started. First of all, please open the onboarding view file. After that, the very next step that we need to do is to store the image's offset value with a new property. Please enter the following code in the properties block section as I show you. At state private var image offset cg size equals cg size width 0 height 0. As you may notice, the cg size structure type has two parameters. The first parameter is the width, and the second one is the height. When we start the dragging gesture, then we will store these values with one property. Another excellent tip for you, since both initial values are 0. Therefore, we can simplify this value set with a special value. Would you please replace the width 0 and the height 0 with this code? .0. And there it is. This particular 0 property is basically the same, with less code written to the previous code snippet. After this prep work, we can move on and start developing the new features. Drag gesture. Please scroll down to the end of the image view. And let's add a new gesture modifier to it. Enter this code. Gesture. Drag gesture. New comment. The end of the gesture. Now we need to add a new modifier to this particular drag gesture. Enter. On, changed. Gesture in. Image offset. Equals gesture dot translation. Please keep in mind that this gesture's translation provides us the necessary information about the total movement from the start of the drag gesture to the current event of the drag gesture. From now on, we can store and update this information with the image offset property. And the only thing that we need to do after this to move the image horizontally is to add a new offset modifier to it. So let's do it right now. Please insert the cursor between the animation and the gesture modifiers and start entering this code. Offset x image offset dot width multiplied by 1.2 y 0 This offset modifier with its changing x value will move this graphic in the desired direction. Great job so far. But to make sure this code works properly, we need to build and run the project in the simulator or, even better, on a real device. After the launch, we need to drag this image on the screen. As you can notice, after playing with it a little bit, this code is okay. However, we need to deal with more aspects of this feature than we might initially have thought. The first thing that we need to do is add some constraints on how much users can move this graphic away from its original position on the screen. That said, let's switch back to Xcode and make this happen, shall we? First of all, please cut out the code snippet from the unchanged modifiers closer to the clipboard as I do. Then let's add a new conditional statement into it. Enter the following code. If abs image offset dot width less than or equal to 150. After that, please paste the code snippet inside this conditional statement as I show you. Now, hold on a sec and let's analyze this code. We converted the image offset's width value to a positive value at the first half of this conditional statement. You know, this abs generic function returns the absolute value of the given number. The reason behind it is straightforward. When users drag the graphic to the left direction, then this width value goes to the negative number range. And as you can on the second half of this conditional statement, we want to stop the dragging feature in both directions at 150 points. To wrap it up, by creating an absolute number, we simplified the conditional statement a lot. Now let's test how this code works. Alright, after the launch, if we start dragging the illustration, we should see a specific point when the movement will stop. This will prevent users from accidentally moving the image outside the visible screen area. How fantastic is that? Yet, if we stop dragging the image, we should also see that it remains in its position. And that is something we should avoid by adding a new feature that will deal with this scenario. Please, jump back to Xcode. And let's add a new so-called onEnded modifier to this drag gesture. Enter this code after the onChanged modifier as I do. onEnded underscore in image offset equals dot 0. Fantastic. This code will restore the initial 0 value of the x and y coordinates of the image view. There is nothing fancy in the new code. What about another quick test? Let's test what will happen when we stop dragging the image. Alright, as you can see, it works like it is supposed to. Of course, there is no animation added to this movement. But don't worry, we will work on it soon. As I show you, please jump back to Xcode and add this new animation modifier after the gesture modifier. Enter this code. Animation. Ease out. Duration. 1. Value. Image offset. Super. As you can see, there is no specific scheduling added to it, and that is what we exactly want. Now we can test the application again. So let's do it. You know, we are better if testing it regularly than finding out later if something goes wrong, in my opinion. As you can see, when we stop dragging the image horizontally, then it will move back to its original position in 1 second with a slowing down animation. And the end result is much better and much professional than the previous state. The difference is day and night, and I hope that you agree with me. Let's play with it a little bit. And let's talk about what's next. I think we can make this dragging feature much better by adding some rotation effect to this image. Are you ready to get familiar with how the rotation works in swift.UI? Then what are we waiting for? Let's do it right now. Rotation effect. Please enter the following code after the offset modifier. Rotation effect. Degrees. Double. Image offset. Width divided by 20. Great job. As you can see, swift.UI has a rotation effect. And this new rotation effect modifier rotates a view around a specific point. This rotation effect has two parameters. The first parameter is the angle, and the second parameter is the anchor. In this case, we are only using the angle parameter by specifying the degree to set how much the image should be rotated. We don't need to specify the anchor because its default location is the center, which is precisely what we want. As far as the rotation's degree, we want to use a dynamic value, and we can do it with the size of the image offset divided by 20. Now let's test how this rotation works in action. While playing with this new feature in the simulator, you may ask why we decided to use this arbitrary number. And my answer is by pure experimentation. You know, we can use any smaller or larger numbers. And in the end, it is up to us which number we find the most suitable for this feature. Now, let me ask you how you like this improved feature. It's pretty darn good. Am I right? After finishing that, would you like me to show you how to make this effect more interesting? You know, by dragging this graphic, we are not tied to move and rotate this image view, but we can use this gesture to interact with other user interface elements as well. And that is exactly what we will do by developing a parallax effect in swift.UI. Parallax effect. Please switch back to Xcode and navigate the cursor to the circle group view as I show you. Here we are going to add 3 new modifiers to this instance of the ring component. Enter the following code. Offset x image offset dot width multiply by -1 blur radius abs image offset dot width divided by 5 animation ease out duration 1 value image offset. Awesome. First of all, since we would like to move the ring in the opposite direction than the dragging, therefore we had to make the offset's value the opposite. So when users drag the graphic to the left direction, then the ring's offset value must be in the positive number range. On the contrary, when users drag the graphic in the right direction, then the ring's offset value must be in the negative number range. I hope you can understand this. The second modifier is the blur effect. For that, we needed to work with the absolute positive value of the image offset. You know, providing a negative number for the blur effect does not make any sense. The last modifier is animation. I think that this code is quite self-explanatory to you by now. Okay, you know the drill. It's time to test how this new feature works in action. After the launch, we will play with this enhanced dragging feature a little bit. As you can see, when we are dragging and moving the graphic on the screen, then this gesture starts moving the ring in the opposite direction. On top of that, the ring will be blurred during the animation. How freaking cool is that? You know, this bidirectional movement creates an illusion of viewport changing. And the combination of these actions will create an advanced horizontal parallax effect at the end. I hope you learned something new by gradually developing this complex effect. It's almost perfect. But you know what? We can make it even better by giving users some hints about what to do. And by doing that, we will improve the overall user experience by a leap forward. Yeah, sometimes some parts are self-explanatory, but sometimes we need to provide some guidance to users. And that is what we are going to develop in the remaining part of this tutorial. UX enhancement. Without further ado, let's go back to Xcode and navigate the cursor to the end of the center section, as I show you. Here we will add a new overlay modifier to this view. Enter the following code. Overlay. Image. System name. Arrow. Left. And right. Circle. Font. System. Size. 44. Weight. Ultralight. Foreground color. White. With this code, we have just put a bidirectional arrow symbol over the center section. Of course, now we need to figure out how to position this image at the bottom. And guess what? The overlay modifier has a second but less known property, so-called alignment, that we can use to achieve our goal. Enter this new parameter with a comma after the image's modifiers. Comma. Alignment. Bottom. As you can see, with this alignment parameter, we repositioned the arrow symbol as we wanted. We just need to make a little refinement. Go back to the image view and add this new modifier to it. Enter this code. Offset. Y. 20. Great job. It's much better now, in my opinion. Now, we can improve this design with 2 additional things. The first thing, this arrow symbol is not as important as other UI elements on this screen. That is why we will display this symbol a couple of seconds later. To do that, First, let's add some more modifiers after the offset modifier. Enter the following code. Opacity is animating, question mark, 1:0. Animation, ease out. Duration, 1. Delay, 2. Value is animating. Super. This code will reveal the arrow symbol slowly with a nice animation. Now let's make a quick test how this feature works. After the launch, as you can notice, 2 seconds must pass before seeing the arrow symbol. Next time when you need to create a similar effect, just remember this delay modifier that we added to the animation. Cool. The second thing, I think that we should hide this symbol when the dragging gesture starts. You will see how this little detail will make a massive difference at the end. Please, jump back to Xcode and scroll up until the parameters section as I show you. Here we need to create a new parameter to store the opacity value of the arrow symbol. Enter this code, please. Add state private var indicator opacity double equals 1.0. After that, we need to add a second opacity modifier to the image symbol as I do. Enter this code. Opacity. Indicator opacity. Whoa, wait for a sec. Nobody told you before that we can add as many modifiers to a swift.UI view as we want. Just keep in mind that order could matter. In this case, the modifier order is irrelevant. Now, we will make sure that every time users start dragging and moving the graphic, this opacity changes from 1 to 0. To do that, we need to find the onChange modifier of the image drag gesture and enter this code. With animation, linear, duration 0.25, indicator opacity equals 0. Excellent job so far. With this code, we can hide the arrow symbol with a nice linear animation. Now the next step is to make this symbol visible again when the drag gesture ends. To make it happen, please jump to the onEnded modifier and enter this code. With animation, linear, duration 0.25, indicator opacity equals 1. Super. This code will change the opacity's value from 0 to 1, making the arrow symbol on the screen visible. It is as simple as that. I think it's time to test how this new feature works in action. Do you agree? I hope so. Let's do it right now. After the launch, we can see the initial animated fade-in animation of the arrow symbol. Now, let's check out what will happen after image movement. Alright. As you can see, this is faded out or faded in according to its actual state. How cool is that? Since we have accomplished so many great things in this tutorial, we definitely deserve to take a break. Just one more thing before we call it a day. I would like to show you something important about swift.UI's text view. You might think about a static text view that's quite boring, and you were right. However, you can stumble upon a situation when you want to change the string value of any text view with a nice dissolve transition. It sounds that it is a pretty easy task to do, but you might be surprised very soon. Text transition. We will start with creating a new string property with a default value that we can change later. Please jump back to Xcode and enter the following code inside the main view but outside its body structure, as I show you. Add state private var text title string equals share. Now, we will replace the hard-coded title with this new property. Let's navigate to the header section and do that. Text title. As you can see in the preview, nothing visible has changed so far. However, by adding this new property to this text view, we can change its value whenever we want with whatever we want from now on. But not only that, we would like to make this change happen with a nice transition. That's why we need to add a new modifier to this view. Enter this code. Transition. Opacity. This modifier should provide an animated transition from transparent to opaque on insertion and from opaque to transparent on removal. With that said, we need to find a place to trigger this transition by changing the text's value. I think that the drag gesture of the illustration is a great candidate for this job. Please scroll down to the image view and insert this code in the onChanged modifier as I show you. Text title equals give. Then, please jump to the on-ended modifier and finish this feature by adding this code. Text title equals share. Basically, with this code, we change the value of the text view back and forth when users start and stop dragging the graphic on the screen. It is as simple as that. We are almost done. The only thing that we need to do now is checking out how this transition works in action. Please build and run the project. After the launch, we need to start dragging the graphic to trigger this new feature. So let's do that. Can you see what's happening on the screen? It's not quite what we want. It works only partially. As you can see, there is no problem with changing the text when we start dragging and moving the graphic. However, instead of getting a smooth opacity transition, we can notice some strange behavior when this string value change happens. Let's jump back to Xcode and let me explain why this glitch occurs and how we can fix it. Problem solving. Alright. First of all, please scroll to the title. Then please listen to me carefully. The problem that prevents seeing the opacity transition is a bit controversial. In general, we know that swift.UI does a fantastic job when it comes to monitoring each view and property change that can occur while running the application. However, when we change the value of any text view, it turns out that swift.UI works differently. The problem that prevents triggering the opacity transition is the following. swift.UI does not consider this string value change to a view change. Yes, we are changing the value of this text from the word share to the word give. However, the program still considers this text view the same, which is the source of the problem. Logically, we think that changing the string value makes this text view different. But in reality, the swift.UI framework recognizes it the same. And that is why we could not trigger the opacity transition. But don't worry, because the fix is surprisingly easy to implement. Identifiable views. You know, every swift.UI view has got a particular method, so-called ID. And the ID method's job is to bind the view's identity to the given proxy value. We rarely use this ID method on its own. However, there are special cases when it could help us tremendously. We use the ID method to tell swift.UI that a view is no longer the same view. And by doing that, we can trigger the desired opacity transition. To make this happen, we just need to add this method to the text view with some unique value that we can change when the drag gesture starts. Enter the following code. ID. Text title. As you can see, we created a unique identification for this text view. And when users start dragging and moving the graphic, then we change this ID to another one. We can trigger the opacity transition with this simple action, since swift.UI recognizes this text view after the change as a totally new view. But the proof of the pudding is in the eating. So let's check out how this code works in action. Please build and run the project last time in this tutorial. Okay. If we did everything right, we should see the text replacement with the desired opacity transition while dragging the graphic on the screen. And there it is. How cool is that? Our work is complete. Congratulations! With this last feature that we just developed, we ended this two-part animation series. I hope you have enjoyed the development so far, and you can appreciate each detailed feature that we worked on in the past lessons. By now, we have finished developing every major feature. But I can promise you that the following really short and pretty sweet tutorial will be only the cherry on the cake. Until then, happy coding! In this swift.UI tutorial, we will work on some fine-tuned details by developing 3 additional features to this application. By the end of this short lesson, these final touches will make the Restart app even better, so you can proudly include it in your professional portfolio. The first feature is quite simple. But to understand what we will do, first, we need to check out the current state of this app. As you can see in this demo, there is a status bar at the top of the screen. Currently, this status bar is in black, meaning that the device is in light mode. Now let's see what will happen if we change the device's appearance. Go to Simulator's toolbar, and under the Features main menu, click on the Toggle Appearance menu item as I show you. Alternatively, we can use the Shift plus Command plus a keyboard shortcut to change the appearance. And there it goes. As you can notice, we have just changed the device's main appearance from light to dark mode. And guess what? In my opinion, the light status bar on the onboarding screen is more appropriate than the dark status bar. And this is the first feature that we will develop soon. Status bar style. Please open the onboarding view file in Xcode and scroll down to the end of the main view as I show you. Here, we are going to add a new modifier to this view. Please enter the following code. Preferred color scheme. Dark. You know, this color scheme method always applies to the nearest enclosing presentation, such as a popover or window. In our case, this is the main view, and we explicitly told our program that we want to use the dark color scheme for this view. And by doing that, the status bar conforms its appearance according to our choice. Let's see how this code works in action. Please build and run the project either in the simulator or on your iPhone. After the launch, we can immediately see that the status bar style changed to the dark mode. Let's see what will happen when we change the simulator's global appearance. Now, if we go to the home view, then we can see that the device is in dark mode. So far, the new feature is working. We just need to check it out by switching back to the light mode again. Let's do that first, then please go back to the onboarding screen as I do. As you can see, with this specific view modifier, we can decide which preferred color scheme is applied to any individual window or popover UI element. How cool is that? Now we can focus on developing the second feature. This time we will play sound effects to the buttons. Audio player. To do that, first, we need to develop a new audio player function in a new Swift file. Please select the Utilities group in the sidebar. And let's create a new Swift file as I show you. We need to choose the empty Swift file template in the pop-up window. Then we can add the following name to this file. Audio player. Finally, we can save it into this utility group by clicking on the Create button. Alright, in order to create a sound player, first, we have to import the Audio Video Foundation framework. So let's do it. Enter the following code. Import AV Foundation. AV Foundation. AV Foundation is a full-featured framework for working with time-based audiovisual media on iOS, macOS, watchOS, and tvOS. We can easily play, create, and edit movies, sound files, and build powerful media functionality into any apps using this framework. After importing this audiovisual framework, we can create a new audio property to play a sound file. Enter this code. var audio player. Type of a V audio player, ? After that, we will create a new function that we can run each time we want to play any sound file. Enter this code. Function, play sound. Sound. String. Type. String. Opening curly bracket, closing curly bracket. Great. As you can see, this function has two parameters. The sound parameter is the name of the sound file, and the type parameter is the name of the file extension. It can play any supported audio file, such as MP3, M4A, or even WAV files. It's pretty self-explanatory. Now we need to create a new path property that we can use to point out any sound file in the application bundle. Enter the following code. If let path equals bundle.main.path for resource sound of type opening curly brace, closing curly brace. With this code, we can add any necessary sound file to the audio player that we want to play. But to do that safely in the Swift programming language, we need to use proper do, try, catch error handling. Enter this code. Do, opening curly brace, closing curly brace. Catch, opening curly brace, closing curly brace. Print. Could not play the sound file. Then go back to the previous do block and enter. Audio player equals try AV audio player. Contents of URL. File URL with path. Audio player. ? Play. And there it goes. You know, there are many ways to play a sound file. However, I think this is one of the most efficient methods to play any selected sound file from the local app bundle for this project. And we will use it multiple times in this lesson, playing audio files. Now I'm going to hide the sidebar to make more room for coding by hitting the Command+0 shortcut keys. And to play a sound effect on the onboarding screen first, then please go back to the onboarding screen as I do. So let's do it. After that, please scroll down to the button's drag gesture as I show you. Here, we need to call this new function in the onEnded modifier. Enter the following code. Play sound. Sound. Chime up. Type. MP3. As you can see, we will play a chime sound effect when users swipe the button to the right and switch to the home screen. Okay, now let's see what we can do on the second screen. Please open the home screen and navigate the cursor to the button's action as I do. After that, please enter the following code. Play sound. Sound. Success. Type. M4A. As you can notice, this time, we want to play a different sound effect with another file extension. With running this play sound function, basically, we are done developing this new feature. Perfect. It's time to test how it works in action. Please, build and run the project as usual. Testing. If everything goes well, then we should hear a chime sound when we drag the button to the right. So let's do it. And there it goes. Did you hear that? I hope so. Now let's click on the restart button and check out the second sound effect. It works like a charm. How cool is that? I hope that you enjoy developing these extra features. After adding the sound effect feature to this application, we can work on the last feature before we call it a day. Haptic feedback. Haptics engages people's sense of touch to enhance the experience of interacting with on-screen interfaces. We can play various types of haptics in addition to visual and auditory feedback to enhance touch gestures or toggling a switch. On top of that, we can use it to highlight, deny, or confirm any other user interactions. Now let's see how we can utilize haptics in this application. First of all, please switch back to the onboarding view file as I do. After that, we will create a new property that will conform to the haptic feedback generator prototype. Enter the following code. Let haptic feedback equals UI notification feedback generator. Soon we will use this property to trigger a notification feedback by calling its particular built-in method. To make it happen, we need to scroll down to the onEnded drag gesture modifier and call this specific method. Enter this code. Haptic feedback. Notification occurred. Success. Now let's continue adding another feedback to this drag gesture. Would you please navigate the cursor to the second part of the conditional statement and enter the following code. Haptic feedback. Notification occurred. Warning. The one thing that you need to keep in mind is the following. This new notification occurred method tells the generator that a task or action has succeeded. Awesome job. We have just finished adding another great feature to this application. Again, congratulations. Just one more thing. Testing the haptics. The only proper way to test how the haptic feedback feature operates is to try it out on a physical device. Please make sure that the system haptics is enabled in the iPhone settings. To check it out, first, launch the Settings app on your phone. Then open the Sound and Haptics settings page as I show you. Here, scroll down to the end of the page and make sure the system haptics feature is enabled. With that, you're all set to test this new feature on your phone. Alright. I hope that you enjoyed developing these handy features, and by doing that, we improved the overall user experience and the vibe of this application.